artist. I draw a stick, my partner's a brilliant artist. I draw a stick man, you can't recognise it as a stick man. So that's not where my talent lies, but I'm always fascinated by artists. So for you, was it the writing or the art that came first as a real passion?
Hard to say. I've been drawing ever since I was a toddler, essentially. I used to copy cartoons that I was watching on the TV, like Pokemon, which I'm wrecking today. Drew a lot of Pokemon in my time. But at the same time I was writing stories, just like silly little stories in a notebook. So they kind of, but I think they sort of came together as a package deal for me, because for me it's always been about creating characters. When I was drawing, I was creating these characters, and also I was writing about them, so they were very much interlinked.
And so were they always illustrated stories right from the beginning?
No, they weren't. Not necessarily illustrated. I think I always ended up drawing the characters, but I would still sit down and write. It would just be writing. I think the first long form story I wrote, it was just on like notepad paper in a ring binder, loosely based on probably Digimon or something like that. And then in my free time I would like draw the characters from the story. So yeah.
Brilliant. So I know that you've said before that the world of Heartstopper is not autobiographical, but I think like teachers and librarians are so vital for young LGBTQ lives. I mean, especially in schools, they offer that safe space, and you depict that so beautifully with Charlie's art teacher, obviously. Did you, though, have someone like that for yourself at school? Was there a teacher or librarian who offered that safe space?
Weirdly, not really.
Right, okay.
I never really had that special connection with a particular teacher of mine, like Charlie does with Mr. Ajayi. But saying that, I always remember my year 5 teacher, who, didn't have that connection or anything, but he was a very strange teacher in that he really encouraged creative writing, but he didn't try and teach it to us. He just gave us all an empty exercise book, and then for an hour a day we would just get to write whatever we want. No prompts, no lesson. It was literally just time for us to write anything we wanted. And from that, I remember just having so much fun doing that because of the freedom of it, and I could just write and write and write. And I filled up an exercise book and asked for a new one, and I feel like that's, was he allowed to do that? I don't know. Was that in the syllabus? Probably not. But that really was special to me, I think, as a young person who loved writing stories.
Yeah, so it gave you that space. I mean, my thing, I always say, forgive me just a tiny little story, but my English teacher, Mrs. Breeds, I come from Skegness, by the way, just over on the coast. Skegness crew is in the audience. And I had a brilliant English teacher called Mrs. Breeds, and she said to me when I was about 15, 16, I've got this book, I don't want you to tell your parents that I've given it to you, and it was Amistad Maupin's Tales of the City. This was during section 28. She could have lost her job for that, but she said, I think it'll really speak to you. And that's all she left it at that. And I'll always remember, we always remember those teachers, don't we, who have that massive impact on us.
Yeah, that's so special.
So, yeah, I'd like to talk about your process creatively. I'm always interested how other writers, create their stories. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Does everyone know what I mean by a plotter or a pantser? I mean, basically, do you know everything that's going to happen in the story before you start, or do your characters sometimes really surprise you?
Yeah, I'm definitely more towards a plotter than a pantser. I could never just launch into a story fully making it up with every sentence that I write. I have to have some idea of where I'm heading. But I don't plan, it varies. For my novels, I do plan in a lot of detail because I feel like with a novel, you need to know every single beat. that is coming, because it's not, you know, it's got to have a complete arc, I guess. And for me, that means I want to plan every beat of that. But for Heartstopper, the graphic novels, they're much more of an ongoing story, very episodic. They don't necessarily have just one plot that starts at the beginning and then ends at the end. There's sections of the story which explore different things. So in that case, I didn't go into it having planned every single beat of that. I had an idea of where it was going, but I was still making it up a little bit as I went along. So yeah, different formats.
I mean, I'm fascinated by that. So has there been a character that has surprised you in their story development more than another one? That somebody said, oh, I'm not going to actually do this that you want me to do, or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, I'm trying to think. I feel like, I mean, immediately comes to mind, this isn't even in one of my books, but Imogen from the TV show, who I introduced into the story really to help Nick's story and give him a little bit of drama that isn't really there in the graphic novels. But then we all just fell in love with Imogen, and I had to expand her story, and you know, like she goes on her own queer journey through the TV show, and that was completely unexpected. Like I really didn't plan that at the start, so yeah, Imogen just had to have her moment.
She is surprising. That is really interesting. So, and what comes first? I guess this leads on from that. What comes first for you, or lands in your head first? Is it mainly character, or is it story? Just like a story idea, something, and then you develop characters around it, or the other way around?
I think definitely characters before story. I find plotting stories the most challenging part of writing. But even before characters, maybe more so in my prose novels, I usually start with an idea or a theme or a question, just like a topic that I have been thinking a lot about and I want to explore in my writing. And then from there, I think, you know, what character needs to be at the centre of this and how will they explore that idea. So, but Heartstopper's a little bit different because obviously the characters existed before, and so Heartstopper definitely started with Nick and Charlie.
So well, that leads on to my next question. So when you first pitched Solitaire, you know, the text for everything, in which you first meet Nick and Charlie, you didn't tell your publisher that you were 17. Is that was right, wasn't it?
That is correct, yes.
And what was it? You know, I guess it's an obvious question, but why were you nervous about that?
Well, I mean, I think I suspected that I would face, or people would, you know, see that I'm a teenager and think, oh, well, there's no point. Like, she clearly needs to spend a bit longer writing more things before she could be a published author. I think in my query letter to my agent, I said I was a student, which could mean I'm a 21-year-old university student. But I think I was actually 18 at the time. But fortunately, in the first meeting that I had with my literary agent, I said to her, I'm 18 years old, is that a problem? And she was not fazed at all, literally did not affect anything, and it all worked out, so.
Although I do think you've been a bit of a trailblazer in that, because when I was published, I was quite young initially as well, and it was a bit like, you did feel that pushback and resistance. And I think it's examples like yours which has opened up the eyes. You know, you don't get that age discrimination as much as you used to, which is good. So going back to the origins of Nick and Charlie in Solitaire, I love Tori, by the way, Team Tori. How did Heartstopper, you know, how did those characters grow out of that initial kind of meeting with them?
I mean, Nick and Charlie, so for those who don't know, Nick and Charlie were secondary characters in Solitaire. We kind of see a bit of their relationship from Tori's point of view, but we don't know how they got together or what their relationship is really like outside of Tori's own world. And when I finished Solitaire, I had fallen in love with these characters, and I just knew that they had their own story, and I wanted to tell it somehow. And for quite a long time I tried to plan it as a novel. I thought, maybe a prequel novel of some sort to Solitaire, but I couldn't get their story to work in the structure of a novel, where it has that beginning, middle, end. Nick and Charlie's story felt more serialized to me, more episodic, and that kind of perfectly fit the format of webcomic. And so that's sort of where Heartstopper was born. But in the middle of those two things, in the middle of Solitaire and Heartstopper, there was in fact the Nick and Charlie novella.
Which we're all here for.
Yes. And that was sort of around that time it was really me exploring who Nick and Charlie were, because I was so interested in why they were such a supportive, loving couple at such a young age. It's not a super common thing. And I wanted to see where they were going to end up. And as you know, Nick and Charlie, the novella, is set at this point still after Heartstopper, when they're a little bit older. Yeah. So that was my first exploration of who they are as a couple, and that my love for them has never ended since then.
Well, our love hasn't either. I mean, it's the 10th anniversary, obviously, of Nick and Charlie, and that is so interesting because they have almost developed in these separate timelines. Yeah. So do you ever feel constrained when you go back to an earlier point in their timeline that this can't really happen now because we've done this a bit later on?
Yes. It has caused me problems. I think just because of who I am as a person and who I am as a writer, I don't feel like I need to completely stick to the canon that I've written in the Nick and Charlie novella. Some authors may feel differently and would take their previous work as lore and they have to build everything around that. But for me, I feel like Nick and Charlie have developed as characters so much since then. It was literally 10 years ago that I wrote that. And Nick and Charlie have been through so much as characters since then in Heartstopper. I now feel that the Nick and Charlie novella isn't quite true to who I think the characters have become.
Interesting.
And so now that I'm kind of approaching the timeline of the Nick and Charlie novella, I'm looking at it and thinking, how can I respect the story that I have already written while also respect the characters that I've created in Heartstopper? And for me, it's about finding a balance of those things. Yeah.
But I think that's fine because they almost exist in different mediums anyway, and they explore different parts of their lives within those. Yeah. I just want to talk a bit about representations. Obviously, representation is really important in fiction. And I think globally, really, Nick and Charlie and their friends have just been doing wonderful things in that regard. Especially Elle for trans representation, and Nick, which I think perhaps even more so is not represented enough in bisexual representation. So how important is it for yourself to be representing, all of those different, part of that wonderful rainbow that we all exist in the LGBTQ plus community?
It's a thing that developed quite naturally as I was creating Heartstopper. I didn't go into Heartstopper with that as the intention. I thought I was just going to tell the story of Nick and Charlie and how they got together. But as I was creating their friend group and the cast of characters was growing, I thought, okay, here's actually an opportunity to show quite a diverse range of queer characters and different experiences of queerness. And in a story that is so joyful and celebratory, maybe that could be helpful and enjoyable for people to read. And now, hopefully it has been.
Yeah, I think I do a lot of school visits, so I'm always going around the country, and what's lovely now, obviously, is that a lot of schools have LGBTQ clubs, But that is the thing that I hear in schools, you know, and that's, I guess, the ground level of it, is that you hear from these kids, especially in rural areas like Lincolnshire and places like that, that this is where they see themselves in Heartstopper and things like that. And it's that little bit of hope that they hold to themselves. So, and going on from that, there are such wonderful small moments, but powerful moments in your creation. So I love, if anyone can remember this, in the first Heartstopper volume, where the little peek moment. I love it when Charlie has a little peek at Nick, and it says peek. It's brilliant. Also with Nick and his exploded pen. I know these are tiny moments, but they're so sweet and beautiful. My pen exploded when I was at school, and a cute boy helped me to go to the bathroom to get cleaned up, but nothing ever bloomed from that, unfortunately. And also that wonderful moment when Nick's mum says to him, "You're much more yourself with Charlie." And just truly lovely, poignant moments. What I'm interested in, did those, I mean, it may be different for each moment, but did those moments come to you very naturally in the writing, or were they moments where you thought, where you really had to think about them and create them?
I think they come quite naturally as part of the comic creating process. I mean, I've read so many comics, and I grew up reading comics, and it's all about those little, you know, one panel moments that just grab you, and make you feel so much in such a simple way. And so that was kind of the style that I wanted to emulate when I was creating Heartstopper. So yeah, I don't remember, you know, sitting down and planning really carefully, particularly right at the beginning, because at the beginning when I started making Heartstopper, I didn't do much planning at all. I really just launched into it. But yeah, I guess it did feel quite natural in the style of it.
But they're so eloquent, that's the thing. It's like, if you were, I'm a prose novelist, obviously, and that would be a page or 2 pages of writing, and yet that, and it's not even a full page panel, it's just that tiny, wonderful little bit. Another lovely moment, I think it's a real education moment for us older queer people. I'm not ancient, by the way, but older queer people, who, when Nick is searching online about his sexuality, and as I'm watching, and also in the TV show as well, it's almost overwhelming, the amount of resources he has, and that is almost a challenge. And we had the opposite challenge, because we had nothing. Under Section 28, you had no resources whatsoever. So it's a kind of different kind of challenge, but it really, really true. And I guess it's not even a question, I guess it might be just be a point that how this is a comfort for younger readers who are identifying with it, but it's really an education for us older readers as well. I don't know what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on the internet. I sort of came into social media as it really started to boom. And so my teenage experience is the digital age, essentially.
Yes, yeah. Mine's the parchment age.
So when I write my teenage characters, I always include social media, internet use, because it is just an essential element of being a teenager nowadays. And like you said, that does have its pros and cons. Like Nick can access so much information about being queer, but he's also kind of bombarded by it, and it's too much, which is certainly how I feel about everything on the internet nowadays. It's too much. But yeah, so I thought that was kind of a funny, sweet, like tense, you know, there's so many emotions in that scene. Yeah. It is funny if you look at it from one angle, but then you actually think about it and it's like, oh, poor Nick, he's really struggling. But yeah, it's a different experience, I guess.
It is, yeah. That's why my recent book has World War I gay boys in it, because they don't have to deal with that. They just have to deal with the war. I mean, it's a small thing. Coming out is shown in a lot of different ways in your work, which is so wonderful. And it's easier for some characters than it is for others. How do you go about crafting your LGBTQ characters' reality in terms of that huge step?
Yeah, I mean, I think acknowledging that there are so many different ways to come out, and also it's not a one-time thing.
No.
I think that's something that I've tried to show in Heartstopper, and also in the Nick and Charlie novella. Actually, in the novella, Nick is really worried about going to uni and having to come out all over again. Because he's been out at school for quite a long time at that point, and it's not something he has to do a lot anymore. But he's about to go into this whole new world where he's probably going to have to come out loads of times to loads of different people, and that's quite a scary thought. So yeah, just the idea that it's not something that is one and done, you know, that's it forever. And also, it can go well, it can go badly, it can be weird in between. There's just so many different ways that it can happen, and I've tried to show a variety of those.
And you do brilliantly. I think it's, and it's never, as you say, it all goes on all the way through your life.
Yeah.
You're constantly having to come out to people constantly, and it's exhausting. I love that moment in Love, Simon, you know, Becky Albertelli's thing, where there's that little fantasy moment where everyone who's straight comes out, and you think, it might be a bit different if everyone had to come out. So joy, we've already mentioned joy, which is at the real heart of Heartstopper, despite all the very authentic darker moments as well. So we've got bullying, Charlie's mental health, his eating disorder, Nick's struggles initially and everything. Simple question perhaps, but why is joy so crucial to Nick and Charlie's story?
Well, again, it really wasn't something that I thought about going into the story. I wasn't like, I'm going to create the most joyful story I could think of. I think it was more that I love these characters and I wanted them to have their happy ending. And so everything in Heartstopper has that optimistic lean and that sort of sometimes slightly rose-tinted but just generally hopeful lens to it.
So that's the space that's needed for those stories as well. There's a space for all kinds of stories. So it's brilliant. Right, so some of you probably don't know this, but there has been a Heartstopper TV show. I've heard it's quite good and done really well, but anyway. How did that come about then? How did the TV show happen?
Wow, it's been a long time we've been working on the TV show now. I think it was back in 2019 that I first heard from Cecil Films, from a guy called Patrick, who is now one of my really good friends. He's an exec producer on the show. He got in touch and was like, I really like Heartstopper, I would love to make it. And I worked with him for probably about a year before we pitched it to Netflix. And then it all went well from there.
Yeah, it's gone quite well. It's great. And so you took on the task, which I don't know, I mean, I feel very overwhelmed by this, but you took on the task of writing all the episodes. And how did that come about? Was that the original plan when you were devising it with Patrick, or how did it happen?
Yeah, I said that I would like to, and I was sort of prepared for them to be like, well, you're not really a screenwriter, we'll get someone else to do it. But they were like, yeah, like, you have a go, see if you can write screenplays. So I did, and fortunately everyone liked them. But yeah, I think I've been really, really lucky in my experience as an author having a book adapted, because the people that I've worked with have been so open to me being involved, which is not super common, to be honest. I feel very lucky in that respect.
That's great. So, and because you're obviously a very visual storyteller, I mean, had you actually done any scripts before that? But I think that must have suited you really well, because you're a visual storyteller. It's a very different skill set than writing either a novel, but possibly more like comics.
Yeah, that's correct, for sure. It's thinking about what to show on screen is very similar to thinking about what to show in a panel, in a page of a comic. It is a visual language, both of them are, and so I think it was quite easy to adapt, at least at first, because also that's the reason why it's so true to the books, because we were just looking at the books and sort of writing it as a screenplay, and we didn't have to change that much.
Although what's brilliant about, because there are two different entities, but what's brilliant about the TV show is you've been able to expand, create new characters. So, you know, what were the opportunities that you found in that? And I know one thing you've mentioned before in interviews is the stakes are different in a comic book than in a TV show.
Yeah, that was the main thing. I think the TV format requires a little bit more drama, and Heartstopper, the comics are very low stakes, low angst. When there are problems, they're sort of resolved pretty quickly, whereas a TV episode usually has to end with some level of hook to get you to watch the next episode. So one of the big things that I did have to work on when I was script writing was adding just a little bit more angst into the story, but not too much, because then it wouldn't be Heartstopper anymore. But the other really fun change that I could do was expanding the supporting character stories, which there's really just not room for in the graphic novels. But in the TV show we had so much more space to explore Tao and Elle and Tara and Darcy and think about what's going on in their lives while Nick and Charlie's story is going on.
On that then, what has been your favourite bit to expand? Is it like choosing between your children though?
Yes. Favourite, I mean, I think getting to do the Tao and Elle romance was so much fun, because in the graphic novels you see a little bit of it, you see the moment where they have their first kiss, but you don't see any of the build up to that, or much of it anyway. But in the TV show we could really go all in, full angst, full drama, and just have so much fun with it. So
We love the drama.
yeah.
Now, casting seems to have been miraculous. Because I read the comics before the TV show happened, and I was like, wow, they're come to life. Can you talk about that process? Was it easy, hard? How did you find these wonderful actors?
It was hard. It was very hard. And we had sort of a list of priorities. Like, we wanted to find teenage actors. We wanted them to look like the comic characters. And obviously they needed to be able to act well. And
tick,
so,
tick, tick.
yeah, I mean, actually very hard to find someone who was a combination of all three of those things. So we did a big open call. I'm sure many of you know this already, but we did a big open call. It was really exciting. Unfortunately, we did find someone for all of the characters, but it was tough. And there were several characters who there was really no backup. If we couldn't go with that person, we would have been screwed. But it all worked out, so yeah.
And what was the longest character to cast? How long?
Who was the longest character?
And who was the shortest?
Shortest were Tara and Nick, because we found them through what we did before we did the open call. We did one agented search, so we went out to the actor agents. We thought we'd do that first, see who comes back, then we'll do an open call. And in the agent search, we found Karina, who plays Tara, and Kit, who plays Nick. And then we went out on the open call. But there wasn't really someone who took longest, because it all culminated in one final audition with the lead 6 characters.
Right.
And in that audition we were like, yes, these are our actors. So they all sort of got picked on the same day.
So was that like a chemistry audition?
Yeah,
right?
it was a chemistry
brilliant.
audition. Yeah, we did chemistry reads for all 3 of the main couples, and then we did a group scene with all of the 6 actors together. I think it was milkshakes in season 1. The milkshake when they were drinking milkshakes.
That's a good scene for chemistry.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah.
Fantastic. You've talked a bit in the past as well about you see your role in the show as the protector of Heartstopper. So, has that been challenging at any moment where you've had to put your foot down?
Only occasionally. I think I'm lucky that people in the process who I've worked with are very open to what I want to do with the story. The one tricky thing sometimes is just production challenges, like we can't shoot at this location, or we don't have time to do this, we have to cut this scene, and at those moments I really have to think, like, is this scene essential? Are fans going to be devastated if we lose this moment? And in the edit as well, I think that's particularly important because, like, sometimes someone wants to cut a whole scene, and at that point, like, I have to think, is that good for the episode overall, or are we losing something that could actually be really special? It's quite a hard dilemma sometimes.
Yeah. And I guess on that, the comics have a real presence within the TV show. And was that always the plan when you and Patrick were developing it, or did it grow organically, or how did that?
That was always the plan. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
great.
That was really present in our original pitch for the show. Was for the show to emulate the aesthetic of the comic, with the leaves, the animations. That was there from day one. That was a really big part of our vision, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. It wouldn't be the same without it, would
No.
it? So, I just wanted to talk on a little bit, because we've spoken about how important books like Heartstopper are. I've noticed going into schools in the past year or so that there is increasing, unfortunately, homophobia and transphobia in schools and society generally. And you show that, in Heartstopper, the bullying and stuff. How do you think your books and LGBTQ fiction more generally can help?
I mean, it's all about empathy, I guess. Reading about experiences that are not necessarily your own, I think it is really beneficial, particularly as a young person, like a pre-teen. I hear a lot from parents who have introduced their 10-year-old to Heartstopper, and maybe they don't quite understand all of it yet, but it sort of shows them that queerness exists and it's great. So yeah, I'm that. It's all sort of queer books have the power to do that.
It's just that I don't like the word, but I can't think of a better one. It's just normalising stuff. It's just, we're just people. We're late for the bus, we eat sandwiches. We're just people.
Yeah.
So I want to talk again, it's a bit of a serious subject, but I think it's important, about book censorship. Now, we see this a lot in America with certain states banning books. To the extent they're banning Maya Angelou and things like that. And we think, I think that we get complacent in this country and think, oh, well, we would never behave in that outrageous way. What I have noticed going around schools is that subtle pressure being put on librarians and teachers to not discuss LGBTQ things. And also teachers being nervous about putting up pride displays or taking them down. I wonder what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, it's scary. It's really scary, and I think there is certainly a rise in this country. Obviously, in the US, it's become very clear, but definitely in this country too, there's a rise in people thinking that queerness doesn't belong in schools altogether, and so they want those books out. They don't want those displays. They don't want teachers to talk about those things with students. Essentially, trying to bring back Section 28.
By stealth,
Yeah, and it is scary, and it's hard to know as an author what you can do to help. We can spread awareness, we can show that this is happening and talk about it. But I think about it a lot, and I feel a bit lost as to what I personally can do.
I know, it's hard.
It's scary.
It's solidarity. It's going back to the old things. I was saying this to a friend of mine the other day. So I wonder whether we need to reclaim some of the protest of pride and put some of the party of pride is good, but put some of the party to one side for a year or two and reclaim the protest a little bit. I don't know. What's next? I mean, we want to generally in projects, but I think we're all waiting with bated breath about what's next for the new series and stuff. What can you tell us?
I mean, what's next? I'm working on volume 6 of Heartstopper right now, which is really exciting. Having a lot of fun with that. Don't think it'll be out this year because it takes quite a long time to create a graphic novel. But next year, I reckon it should be out. And also, I'm working very hard behind the scenes to get us a renewal for Heartstopper. It is still ongoing. We don't have a final answer yet, but there are so many people behind the scenes who are working really hard to make it happen. We're feeling optimistic, we're feeling hopeful, and hopefully we'll be able to share some news about that sometime soon. Fingers crossed, yeah.
We will sacrifice to any gods.
Yes.
Kind of like,
Yes.
We can. So I think we've reached that moment where we're going to open it up to you guys. So for questions, so raise your hand. We've got 2 roving mics, I think. So we'll start over here. We'll start here. Yes, where are the mics? They should be coming. Oh, here it is. It's arriving.
What about Added Last's character made you want to put him in Radio Silence and Nick and Charlie?
Yeah, so Alid is a character who I created for Radio Silence, actually. That's where he first appeared. He's one of the main characters in my book Radio Silence, and he also appears in Heartstopper. And it all comes from the fact that in Radio Silence there's a little Nick and Charlie cameo. They sort of appear briefly for a bit. They're not even named, they're just described. And I thought, oh, maybe Alid is friends with Nick and Charlie. They're in the same group, well, Alid and Charlie are. So maybe there's some crossover there. And so Alid just kind of appeared in Heartstopper as well. Which is fun. I love little crossovers between books.
It's great. Where should we need to go over this side. Maybe there? Fabulous.
Is there like a specific artist or like song or album you associate with the Nick and Charlie novella?
Ooh, yeah, with the Nick and Charlie novella, I always think of a band called Best Coast and a song called Boyfriend, which just, I don't even think it's a very popular song or anything, but it's just a song that I was listening to at the time, and it just has such summery energy. And always makes me think of the novella, so yeah.
Oh, let's go a bit further back and then we'll come back to you. Yeah.
Hi, so you said just earlier that it's hard to know in a climate such as what we're seeing in America and scarily seeing in this country sometimes as well, what you can do as a writer. And I just wanted to say that I think what you do, or what you have done with Heartstopper, making it such an accessible comic to find online, is probably the most important thing you can do. It's the first thing that I came across before I came across any of your books, years ago now. And I think when you've got young people in America especially, or in countries like that, who might not have the access to books, they still have that access to comics and webcomics. So I wanted to say thank you to you for doing something like that and making it so accessible. And my question would be, obviously you've got Radio Silence, which you said before is hard to tell that story in the Heartstopper TV series, so that's why it's not in there. You've also got I Was Born for This. And if you could choose either of them to explore in the world of, in the format of webcomics, which one would you choose?
Ooh, out between Radio Silence and I Was Born for This, what would I choose to adapt? I think if possibilities were limitless, I might choose I Was Born for This. I feel like I Was Born for This is impossible to adapt. Just it would be too challenging, but in a sort of magical world where anything is possible, I Was Born for This could be a really cool movie of some kind. So I'd go with that maybe, yeah.
Let's come to this lady here. Yes. There you The mic's going.
Hi, so my question is, if Nick and Charlie didn't meet in a school setting, where do you think they would have met?
Where would they have met? Ooh. I mean, it's fun to imagine them meeting when they're a bit older, like at university, or I don't know, even when they're adults. Like, yeah, I guess that could be fun. Yeah, but they would meet each other in any universe, as I like to say. Yeah.
Let's go over this side. Where should we go? Oh, that might be easy for you, then we'll come to you.
How did you get your first agent, and what made you realise you were good enough to get an agent?
Yeah, I didn't quite get.
How did you get your first agent, and what made you realise you were good enough to get an agent?
So I went down the very traditional querying, method of getting an agent. You send your first 50,000 words or what is it? I can't even remember these things. 20,000 words? I can't remember. You send a query letter, you send a synopsis, and then just like send that to a bunch of agents who you think might want to represent you. And fortunately, one of them did, and she is still my agent today, so that went well. But I think at that time, I really loved the book. I really loved Solitaire. I thought it was good. Like, I really genuinely believed in this book and thought I could see that in a bookshop on the shelf. I really believed in this book, and I also thought, like, what have I got to lose by trying? You know, I might as well just give it a go. If it doesn't work out, I've really not lost anything. I'll just give it a shot and see what happens. And fortunately, yeah, it all worked out.
Great. Let's pop it there. We need to go to the back, but I can't really see. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. We'll just go to that person there, their hand up.
I've noticed that High School Musical pops up a lot in the series. Is there a reason for that, or is it just...
Was that about High School
School
Musical
musicals.
references? Well, as a High School Musical fan, I mean, yeah, I that was like a huge part of my experience as a 12-year-old. Love High School Musical, always have, and I feel like my own interests always end up in my stories somehow. So, yeah, lots of High School Musical references.
I was a big Zac Efron fan as well. At the back, we should go to the back.
I've got somebody here.
Oh, brilliant.
Hi, just wondering, what's your experience with writing our Ace characters?
Writing our Ace characters. I mean, there's so much to write about. Like in Loveless, which is about the Arrows experience. Yay! I really went into that thinking I want to write a really thorough coming out novel, essentially, because there've been many amazing gay coming out novels, and I felt like there hadn't been so many Arrow and or Ace coming out novels. And so that was the arc that I chose for that story. But there are so many things to write about, like all queerness. I mean, it's really just what sort of story you want to tell, what angle you want to take, what sort of character you want to write about. It's good fun.
To the back, maybe on this side, and see if we can find someone.
Go on here. Hi, sorry, my question's just about series 3. One of my favourite things that you did was the progression of Isaac's character, and I think one of the best things is he's so sassy, and he always has a book in his hand, which as a fellow reader is great. But what I wanted to just ask is, that's something that you added in personally, and did you pick all the books that he holds in each scene? Because it's a very good choice of books.
Yeah, I mean, that was my decision to make that part of his character. And yes, I choose most of the books. I always do a list for the like the props people,
and say in this scene he should be reading this book, and I always try to pick something that's like vaguely thematically relevant, or you know the title maybe has a relevance to what's going on in the story. It doesn't. There are a few occasions where it doesn't quite work out. Either we can't get the rights to a book, or I'm not there on set and they give them the wrong book. You know, these things happen, but it's a lot of fun. So yeah.
It wouldn't be a problem with mine, just so you know.
Okay.
If you we'll get you those rights. That's no issue. Over this, maybe the middle over this side.
You're making my job hard.
Oh, where are we? Oh, sorry.
Middle this side, yeah? Right, you are. I'm coming through.
My favourite relationship in Heartstopper is only like really seeing just those two in the books. It's the two teachers that took the boys to the Paris. In the sixth novel, would we be able to see more of that, or is it just like just for the Paris trip?
Will we see more of the teachers? Is that you?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the last Heartstopper volume, so I really hope that all the characters will get a final moment to say goodbye. I don't want to leave anyone out. So yes, definitely we'll be seeing the teachers in volume 6.
Fantastic. Come back down the front, maybe on this aisle. Just there. I don't know whether I can see where I've got. Yes. Lovely.
Do you see any of the characters getting married in the future or having kids or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I always say Nick and Charlie are going to get married and have a family. I think they're definitely the sort of people who would want to get married and have some kids. I don't know who else. I mean, the teachers actually, I think would. As for the others, I don't know. So, yeah.
Let's go there.
What would be your favourite book that you've written?
My favourite thing I've written? That's a big question.
You're choosing between your children again.
Again, choosing between my children. I mean, I love all my books for different reasons. I think, you know, Solitaire has such a special place in my heart because it was the first one. It really kick-started the whole journey of all of my books. But Heartstopper brings me so much joy and it's transformed my life in such a big way. But also my other prose novels, I love them all for different reasons, so it's an impossible question. I'm afraid I can't choose.
Okay. Come here, maybe?
Being so involved in the making of the TV show, do you think it's done what not many can do and really brought the characters to life and done justice to the books?
Well, I mean, I'm so happy with the adaptation. I feel very lucky to be an author and have a book adaptation that I feel really is a good adaptation. I mean, it's a hard thing to achieve. And there are a lot of book adaptations that readers are kind of disappointed with because they don't stay very true to the books. So that's why I've been so glad to be involved in the process and getting to make sure that the TV show is something that the original readers will love. Yeah.
Can you come here? Just second row, I think.
Hi. Why in Radio Silence? Why wasn't Alid included in the Heartstopper TV show?
So I decided not to include Alid in the TV show because of his story in Radio Silence. I knew that I would not be able to put Alid's Radio Silence arc in Heartstopper, the TV show. Wouldn't really work, wouldn't make much sense within the context of Heartstopper. So if Alid was in the TV show, I didn't really know what I would be able to do with him that wasn't going against but because that, if I did anything with me, it would go against what's in Radio Silence. It would change the canon of Radio Silence, essentially. And also because I wanted to leave Aled as a character for Radio Silence if there should ever be a Radio Silence adaptation. If Aled was in Heartstopper, that would probably be impossible. So yeah, complicated, but yeah.
Come to the front row, just here. Brilliant.
Do you have any regrets about anything you've written? And if you could go back and change the storyline, would you change anything?
Oh, that's a Paxman-style question.
What do I regret? I don't think I have any big regrets. I'm not the sort of person who really feels bad about mistakes from my books that I've made. There are definitely things in my books that I think, I could do that better nowadays. But I don't feel regretful about that because that was all a learning experience that has sort of led me to this point. And there are definitely not that I can immediately think of anything that I wish I could have done differently, or I feel bad about that is in one of my books. I don't know. So I guess I don't have any.
It's interesting. I think young writers especially often feel really inhibited because they think everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
And the actual, like Alice just said as well, is we're always learning.
Yeah.
Every single book you do, you learn, you get a little bit better. So yeah, right, where are we? Let's go to the middle again, over on that side.
Hello, I really love Loveless. It's my favourite book like ever, and it's like helped me come to terms with like being Arrow Ace and like coming out to quite a few of my friends. What advice would you give to someone who is Arrow Ace and is trying to like work out their place in the world?
Oh my gosh, what would I mean, I think finding the sort of online community is really helpful for Arrow Ace people because it's really hard to find people in real life who you can relate to. But fortunately there is so much information and help online nowadays. There are creators you can follow on social media, there's articles and things you can read that will sort of help you to understand yourself better. So really seeking out that information I think will help a lot, whoever you are, yeah.
Fantastic. We should go over this side again. And let's go, person with a glass. See?
Hi, so just before coming here I unfortunately got broken up with, so I always read your books whenever I'm upset, but I've read them like 12 times over and over again, which I can like recite all the writing. So I was wondering if you had any other book recommendations which kind of still give off the Heartstopper joy and stuff.
Heartstopper joy, oh my gosh, what could I... This is hard because I read a lot of quite miserable books. What? You want to help me out? What?
I would always say Simon James Green.
Oh, that's really,
who is
so
not
awesome.
only an amazing author, very, very funny, but one of the loveliest people you could ever meet. So for his more serious stuff, A Boy Like Me, which is wonderful, but also his Noah books are brilliant. Yeah.
Super funny, like joyful, uplifting, just like an escape.
Absolutely, yeah. And lots of others as well. Where can we go next? On the aisle, middle way down. God, I feel really bad that running around. Like it's like I'm a gym instructor or something.
With both Joe and Kit finding success in Broadway, if you could write Nick and Charlie into any musical, what would you write them into?
What a great question.
Write them into a musical.
An existing musical, you mean? Brilliant.
Oh. Well, my favourite musical of all time is Groundhog Day, the musical. So I would love to see a Groundhog Day of Nick and Charlie. Who would be stuck in Groundhog Day? Maybe Charlie would be stuck going back. Yeah, Charlie would be the main character stuck in Groundhog Day.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I want to see them in Les Mis. Well, Charlie would have to be Valjean, Nick is Javert, but it ends not with suicide and misery, but with them just getting off on the bridge. Love that. What? I mean, maybe one more or two more. We'll, if they're quick. Let's go to the front here. Sorry. We'll get you a power.
Do you have any hopes of bringing out more dyslexia-friendly books?
Do I have any hopes of
bringing dyslexia-friendly books out?
Sorry, I can't.
Dyslexia.
No, dyslexia-friendly books. I would love to. Yeah, I mean there's a great publisher. I think they're called Barrington Stowe.
Yes, yeah, I've done one for them. They're brilliant.
I've got several of their books, and they're so good, and they're dyslexia-friendly. I would love to write a novella or something that was with them or whoever. Yeah, that'd be great.
Fantastic. We are probably one more. Do you think?
One more, yeah.
On the front here, there we go. Just there, in the lovely pink top. Fabulous.
Hi. I was just wondering if you could write a character for yourself for the TV show, what that person would be like.
Oh, if I could put myself in the TV
That's
show.
a good one.
Maybe I could be a teacher. I feel like I could be. I should be the school librarian. I feel like that would make sense.
I think you have to do that or be a villain. Because you created this wonderful world and then you're in it destroying it.
Destroying everything, yes, love that.
That's wonderful. Thank you all so much. I just want to give Alice a big thank you personally from me. I'm doing an event next week at the Imperial War Museum in London, and it was announced on their socials, and we had a lot of trolling from right-wing bigots. And I shut down my Twitter for a couple of days. It was horrible. And am I still there? And I had Heartstopper next to me, fading out. It's the trolls. They don't want me to say it. I had Heartstopper next to me, and I just closed my computer and lost myself in the joy of Nick and Charlie again. And so a big thank you from me to us and you guys.
From all of us at the book festival for all of you coming. I hope you've had a wonderful evening. If you haven't already, we have some signed stock still at the shop at the back, so please feel free to jump over there before you leave, and I hope you all get home safe. Thank you.